Okay. All right. Hello and welcome. Today, we will be speaking to our experiences replicating the case study by Stinson and Zalery, reducing problematic social media use via a package intervention. Okay, the goal of this case study that we chose is to replicate is to reduce social media usage by using a package intervention of app limits as well as contingent reinforcement of monetary compensation. The study took 25 days to complete and data was collected each day. Within these 25 days, we as the participants engaged in pre-baseline, baseline, and intervention phases. Two of the participants also experienced a withdrawal phase after their intervention phase. The four of us as participants are graduate students attending the same university, and we are between the ages of 23 and 29 years old. We all own internet-enabled iPhones, which is where and how we collected our data. Our setting was our natural environment, meaning we continue to live our day-to-day lives in our respective cities. One of us lives in Georgia, one in Indiana, and two in New Jersey. Although we are in different areas of the country, we all share the same time zone. The materials for the replication were pretty simple. Obviously, we needed our iPhone, which had the screen time application that was used to monitor our social media usage duration. There were a couple of assessments taken pre and post intervention, including the Internet Addiction Test, which is online. It's a 9-question multiple choice questionnaire about how using the internet interferes with our everyday lives. Demographic questionnaire, which we went over our age, gender, race, ethnicity, total earnings for the study, as well as our goal of social media duration for each participant. The intervention acceptability questionnaire was taken post-intervention to determine the flexibility, level of understanding, as well as other opinion-based topics that were rated on a Likert scale of 1 to 10. Our data collection and graphing were completed via Microsoft Excel. We have a shared Google Drive for all of our screenshots, which is our IOA and treatment integrity, our data collection for each phase, graphs, protocol, meeting notes, as well as the original study for replication. We used the Opportune app for the contingent reinforcement monetary compensation. In the original study, the participants were given Amazon gift cards for their compensation, but as we're graduate students, we do not have many funds to hand out to each other, so we decided to use a savings app, which is called Opportune, where we would be compensating ourselves instead. A step-by-step explanation of how the savings and earnings worked will be spoken about later on in the presentation. And last but not least, our meetings took place via FaceTime on our iPhones. So the benefit of using our screen time feature on our iPhones is that the data being recorded and documented, members had the direct results of all of the data and determined whether the experiment successfully reduced our social media usage. Members monitored their screen time usage and compared the data from previous recordings throughout the study. Fidelity was measured by obtaining the screenshotted information submitted each morning from group participants. While it is possible that the AI screenshots could be forged from other person's iPhones or data collection, the iPhone screen time feature directly lists the phone's users at the top of the app. You will see on the next slide an example from the study of a screenshot from participant 4. This is one measure participants took to ensure that members used fidelity and honesty when submitting their SMU data. The bar graphs given by the screen time feature also accurately provided a visual representation that matched the data collection numerically regarding our social media usage. Our primary dependent variable was the duration in minutes of social media usage per day. We were only monitoring 3 social media applications. Each participant chose the applications that were the most used on their devices for the intervention phase. The data of social media usage from the original study is any websites, I'm sorry, I said the data. The definition of social media usage from the original study is any website or application where individuals can post or send messages, images, and videos to others, excluding sites or applications primarily used for one-on-one messaging. Text messaging, FaceTiming, and emailing were not considered social media use. So participant 1 chose to monitor TikTok TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Participant 2 chose Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Participant 3 chose TikTok, Instagram, and Marco Polo. And participant 4 chose TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. While social media usage was the primary dependent variable, there are three others as well. They are self reported time spent on alternative activities through the Behavior Allocation Survey. This survey was provided from the original study. Each participant chose three alternative activities to engage in that they wanted to spend more time doing instead of scrolling social media. So, participant one chose reading, exercising, and going and studying. Participant 2 chose schoolwork, house maintenance, and work-related tasks. Participant 3 chose spending quality time with their fiance, wedding planning, and self-care. And participant 4 chose walking, crafting, and self-care. Pre and post intervention internet addiction test scores. The scores for each participant will be discussed in the results section of the presentation. Post intervention acceptability questionnaire. This will also be discussed in the results section of the presentation. Our dependent variable was measured each day by taking screenshots of our screen time application on our iPhones depicting the social media usage from the prior day. A screenshot from participant 4, Taylor, is on the right-hand side showing an example of what we used for our data collection. We grabbed the numbers from these screenshots and then added them into a table. Now I'll turn it over to Allison to chat about our procedures.
So for this particular study, we had a concurrent multiple baseline design. In concurrent multiple baseline designs, it's when the tiers are synchronized in real time. All participants are processed at once so you can retrieve and complete the data sets. Concurrent measurements control better for threats to internal validity. Internal validity is the extent to which the researcher can show that the behavior change that occurred during the intervention was in fact a direct result of the manipulation of the independent variable. For example, our participants submitted their data every morning at the same time at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Participant 1 will not be recording their data 3 days after participant 2. However, our participants started intervention on different days. So even though our participants were on different phases of the study at any given time, data collection was continuously occurring. For our procedures, we started with pre-baseline. Participants recorded their daily usage of social media for 7 days using the screen time application on the iOS processing system on iPhones. All the participants took the internet addiction test at the start of the study. The scores were categorized as mild, moderate, or severe indication of internet addiction. Pre-baseline scores were used to mitigate reactivity to the study and ensure that the data were stable prior to starting intervention. The table depicts the average amount of time each participant spent on social media for the first 7 days of pre-baseline and their respective internet addiction scores. Participant 1 had an average of 126 minutes of SMU daily and had a strong indication of internet addiction. Participant 2 had 125 minutes of internet use and a moderate indication of an internet addiction score. Participant 3 had 31 minutes of SMU daily and had a moderate indication of internet addiction. And participant 4 had 134 minutes average and had a moderate indication of internet addiction. After pre-baseline, the participants then went to baseline. Every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, participants took a screenshot of the previous day's social media usage on their smartphones and uploaded it into a shared Google Drive folder. The shared Google Drive folder acted as our IOA method, as well as that we all had access to this data on a daily basis. On days 2 and 3, participants took the behavior allocation survey for the previous day's activities. In the survey, participants answered how much time was spent on various activities throughout the day. On day 6, participants informed each other of their 3 replacement behaviors to engage in other than social media usage. Participants were then broken up into two groups. Participants 1 and 2 were in group 1, and participants 3 and 4 were in group 2. Group 1 had baseline conditions for 6 days, while group 2 had baseline conditions for 9 days. Having staggered starts to intervention made this study concurrent multiple baselines, as we discussed previously. If any participant had a decreasing trend of total duration of social media usage for 3 consecutive days, they were then required to stay in baseline conditions for an additional 3 days. This was to ensure that data were stable prior to starting intervention.
Then for this portion, I'm going to describe what the intervention phase of the study looked like, what it entailed, and the procedures that we carried out to ensure that we followed the initial study as best as we could, ensuring our integrity and fidelity. So to kind of recap, group members set the application limits on their phone for 3 specific social media applications, which I would like to add that our group found this to be slightly empowering because it really gave us the autonomy to set and determine our own goals and select those applications. And then once we selected those applications, we logged our personal duration goals into the demographic questionnaire table. And if members approached the designated app limit as intervention continued, the phone would alert them. It would give us warnings such as, okay, ignore for 1 minute, ignore for 15 minutes, or ignore for today. And that again left us with the choice of if we would like to choose the intervention or maybe take a different route that day. And then moving forward, like we already discussed a bit, the group members submitted screenshots and submitted their photos daily to the group G Drive to ensure accountability and regular participation to the study. We also uploaded our daily social media usage into an Excel sheet in the form of minutes per day just to have another form of documentation. And then moving on, the group utilized a savings application called Opportune that Samantha mentioned earlier to collect money, which was our contingency management, for successfully uploading our data forms and determining how much additional money we earned depending on whether we met our social media usage goals. And while the original study paid its participants, as Samantha mentioned, we use this application because we could transfer our own money into a savings account that worked for us specifically also. Each screenshot that was submitted resulted in $1 per day that it was uploaded for both baseline and intervention phases. And it's important to note that each screenshot submitted represented the day before. So for example, if we were tracking Monday's data, we would submit that data Tuesday morning. If the earnings had the ability to collect $7 a day if the goals have been met. So for the first day, they had the potential to earn the $7, and it would increase by $1 each day consecutively if the goals were met. If members did not meet their goal, the monetary amount would start over again at $1. And we have an example included on the side that says a participant meets their duration goal for day 1, earning $7. They meet it again on day 2, they earn $8, and then so on and so forth. However, if they do not meet their goal, then they go back to earning the $7. And then the withdrawal procedure to replicate the study as much as possible. The first pair of participants entered a withdrawal phase while the second pair of participants finished their intervention phase. The withdrawal phase included turning off the application limits and seeing if the initial intervention was successful in continuing to decrease the social media usage and increase their participation in their alternate activities that they selected. Participants 1 and 2 still submitted screenshots of their daily usage. However, they no longer earned the $7 a day for meeting their goal, but they did earn $1 for submitting their data. Participants 1 and 2 also verified that their application limits were turned off to also ensure treatment fidelity.
I was participant 1 in the study, and I experienced 7 days of pre-baseline, 6 days of baseline, 6 days of intervention, and 5 days of withdrawal. For myself in particular, it was important that I did do both pre-baseline and baseline in order to ensure that my data were stable. From the graph presented, there was reactivity to the study occurring in pre-baseline phase when the data points being so inconsistent. For the intervention, I chose TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook for the apps in which I wanted to decrease my time spent, and therefore those apps had limits on my phone. I chose an overall goal of 90 minutes daily of social media usage. For the withdrawal phase, app limits were then turned off and the ability to earn money in the Opportune app was removed as well. The only amount of money that I could receive in withdrawal was $1 per day for any screenshots that I submitted into the Google Drive. However, the intervention did show promising results for myself as my data did not change much after the withdrawal phase started. I also remember feeling like I didn't want to waste my social media time on my phone since I only had 90 minutes daily. I would constantly be thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm just scrolling. I need to put my phone down and look at it later when I really want to use my time. Overall, I made $65 from the study because of the days that I stayed under my goal of 90 minutes and for submitting data on time via screenshots.
Hi, I was participant 2. I experienced 6 days of pre-baseline, 6 days of baseline, 6 days of intervention, and 5 days of withdrawal. According to the results, my ABAB graph does not reflect a functional relationship between the total social media usage and the intervention set in place. I believe that this is mostly due to the fact that originally I did not factor in YouTube at the beginning of the replication study, but eventually had to go back and add it into my total usage at the start of intervention due to the lack of having 3 social media platforms. So during moments across all of the phases, my toddler would sometimes use my phone to watch videos via YouTube. So when I had to go back and adjust the minutes, it was impossible to differentiate between minutes that were used by him and minutes that were used by me. So the results could be deemed inconclusive due to this. Additionally, I found myself ignoring my social media limit when my motivation to view social media content was increased. So, for example, when there were viral video series that I found myself ignoring my limits during this time the most. During the last day of intervention, I remember anticipating the 12 a.m. mark so that I could use social media without guilt of going over my limit. I will note that my total social media usage during the first day of withdrawal was higher than any other point across all other phases. Overall, I did earn $49.
Okay, I was participant 3. When we first started the replication, I had variability in my pre-baseline and baseline, and I realized that on the weekends, I definitely spend more time scrolling social media than on weekdays. For baseline, I experienced some reactivity as I was making sure that my numbers didn't decrease before intervention. So I found that I was pushing myself to use social media to make sure that we didn't see it drop in the data. For intervention, I used a goal of 30 minutes of social media a day. This was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. Based off of my pre baseline and baseline, my average use spent on social media a day was between 31 and 49 minutes. So I chose 30 minutes per the study to decrease my usage. And I hit my goal on most days, but not each day. So when I would get the notification that my usage was almost up, I would stay on for another minute and then engage in my alternative activities for the rest of the day. And this would normally occur around 6 or 7 p.m. Overall, I am definitely a lot more aware of my social media usage, and I try to continue to engage in the alternative activities that I chose rather than scrolling. I actually decided to participate in my own withdrawal phase as I was participant 3. I didn't have to do a withdrawal phase. And my numbers jumped up right after intervention. So I am definitely more cognizant of my scrolling now.
And here you see my results. I was participant 4. And after looking at my table and graph, you can see that I did 7 days of pre-baseline, and then I believe we did 9 days of baseline, and then our app limit and contingency management of intervention. And I do see some variability in my pre-baseline and my baseline. As you can see, those last two markers for my baseline plummeted quite drastically. And moving forward, I had set my app limit duration to 90 minutes, which I thought was appropriate. I know that based on my own tendencies, the evenings are really rough for me, and that's when I tend to scroll the most. So I hoped that 90 minutes would be successful. And so while I fell below that goal most days, it did definitely take a serious effort to keep off of my phone and engage in alternate activities. And I believe that if I had experienced a withdrawal phase, my data would have skyrocketed because I know I would have known that there was no longer a time limit that was set for me. And since carrying out this project, I have kept my screen time application on to monitor myself and become more aware of how I spend my time. Usually, it would not matter to me how much time I spend on my phone. However, when looking at this overall, I do think that it's fascinating to see how many hours can slip away by scrolling through social media. I think also what might make up for the spike in my baseline is I also started a new job at the same time when we implemented this whole project. So not having my days to scroll like I typically would, and then the evenings that would kind of cause that jump and that spike. And so one thing that I think I was able to also take away from this was to attempt to go to bed earlier, because I think that that's a habit that myself and maybe some others agree that that's the time when we tend to scroll the most, is at night playing catch up. So I do think that's one great thing that's come out of it, is that I have started to go to bed earlier.
These are the results from our demographic questionnaire. The demographic questionnaire was completed in two parts. One was during pre-baseline and the other was after the study was concluded. Each participant was asked questions regarding their demographics prior to the study starting, and then how much money they received during the study after it was complete. Participant 1 was 28 years old, female, white Hispanic, and earned 65 total and had a goal of 90 minutes of social media usage. Participant 2 was 23 years old, female, Black, non-Hispanic, earned a total of $49 and had a goal of 100 minutes of social media usage. Participant 3 was 29 years old, female, white, non-Hispanic, and earned $63 total and had a goal of 30 minutes of social media usage. And finally, participant 4 was 29 years old, female, white, non-Hispanic, earned $72 total and had a goal of 90 minutes of daily social media usage.
And then moving on to our multiple baseline graphs, we stacked odd participants and even participants. Like we mentioned earlier, we split our group into two sections. One group went through withdrawal phase and one group did not. So on the left side, you see participant 1 and participant 3 stacked, and on the right side, you see participant 2 and participant 4. What I thought was important about including these two specific sets together was that the top graph includes the withdrawal phase. So it gave a good example of what that group went through versus just carrying out the intervention. You will also notice the dashed horizontal line in the app limits and contingency management phase. That represents the duration that we had each set for each other. So it gives you kind of an idea of where we fell in terms of what our hopes were for. This is the internet addiction. This relates back to the online test that we took that determined whether we had a mild, moderate, or severe addiction, and it goes for participants 1 through 4. Pre-intervention is the filled bar, and then post-intervention is the non-filled bar. And the horizontal dashed lines also indicate where the cutoffs are in terms of normal usage, mild addiction, moderate addiction, and severe addiction.
Okay, the intervention acceptability questionnaire, as mentioned previously, was a post intervention assessment. On a scale of 1 to 10, the participants rated the study on certain topics of accessibility and ease. Highlighting two topics, you'll see that 3 out of 4 participants found the study to be relatively flexible, giving it a 7 out of 10. And you'll also see that each participant chose to rate the topic of privacy concerns as a 1 out of 10, proving they felt safe with the information that they had to give out.
So the behavior allocation survey, as mentioned before, represents time spent on selected alternative activities across all participants. So this table depicts the mean difference scores between the baseline and intervention behavior allocation survey reports for participants 1 through 4. To calculate the different scores, we subtracted the values from the first time the behavior allocation survey was administered in the intervention phase from the first time the behavior allocation survey was administered during the baseline phase, and then repeated this process using the second time the survey was taken in both phases. Then we averaged these scores. A positive score would indicate that the participant engaged in the activities for a longer duration in the intervention phase than they did in the baseline phase. So given all of the previous information presented, I will now discuss and analyze the significance of the results presented throughout the study. So results show that intervention was effective at reducing the daily duration of social media usage amongst participants, excluding participant 2, who displayed inconsistent and ineffective results. There was seemingly no functional relationship between social media usage and an intervention for participant 2. This is determined due to the fact that there was a sudden drop before the start of intervention and then a significant increase in the social media usage the first day of intervention, which continued throughout the remainder sessions of intervention when compared to baseline. It is also worth noting that during the withdrawal phase, social media usage was increased when compared to the intervention phase, suggesting that intervention was unsuccessful and did not generalize with participant 2. Although there was a decrease in the duration of social media usage, there was not a general increase in self-reported time spent engaging in selected alternative activities. Participant 2 and participant 4 show an increase in duration engaged in alternative activities during intervention. However, no participant show an increase in all 3 of their selected activities. This could suggest that participants spent more time in other activities that were not selected for intervention, but does not seem to have significant impact on the total social media usage. It is also important to note that although participant 2 did spend more time on selected activities, the total social media usage goal was rarely met. This could suggest that participant 2 experienced a reactivity effect, engaging in the selected activities because they were to report the time spent within the group. Therefore, more research is needed on the relative contribution of the behavior allocation survey, as though participants in which intervention was successful did not report an increase in any of their selected activities, and participants in which intervention was ineffective reported an increase in selected activities. So data from participants 1 and 2 warrant additional discussion as they both display a drop in the daily duration of social media usage 2 days prior to the start of intervention, which was session 12 and 13. It is important to note that both participants were aware that they would undergo intervention phase first, and participant 1 began intervention a day prior to participant 2. The effectiveness of intervention was further supported using the Internet Addiction Quiz, in which 2 of the 4 participants scored lower on the Internet Addiction Quiz after the intervention was implemented than before, scoring in a less severe internet category. Overall, the intervention resulted in 67.9% of days below target goals, compared with the 23.3% during baseline and 25% during pre-baseline. So now I will go over limitations of our study. So during the intervention phase, participants were to select 3 social media apps to set social media limits. Due to the lack of social media platforms in use, participant 2 selected YouTube as an alternative app. This resulted in participant 2 having to submit separate screenshots, as YouTube is defined as entertainment via screen time application via iOS processing system. Future studies should utilize apps consistent with iOS screen time application categorized as social media for more accurate results. Also, because YouTube was categorized as entertainment, participant 2 had to add minutes onto the total social media usage screen time, which could have potentially affected results due to mathematical errors. Additionally, all participants were to take the internet addiction test prior to the baseline phase and after the intervention phase. However, a different test was utilized amongst participant 2 and could have affected results due to different testing conditions. Future studies should ensure that all participants utilize the same testing measure for accurate results or retest once error is determined. Now we would like to take the time to acknowledge those who contributed to the development of our replication study. So Leslie Stinson and Jesse Dallery, who were the original researchers in the initial research study, which is titled Reducing Problematic Social Media Use via a Package Intervention. We would also like to acknowledge our professor, Dr. Mongo, for approving our replication study, as well as Ball State University, where all participants attend. We would also like to acknowledge the technology used throughout our study, which was Apple, Google Workspace, and Microsoft. Below is a list of references. Below is a list of references used throughout our study. We would like to thank all of those not explicitly mentioned previously for their contribution towards any and all information used in our study. Thanks for joining us.